Welcome to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. Each week, She Rebel Radio brings you insights and advice from women entrepreneurs who transformed their prestige prisons into daring entrepreneurial success stories. Now, here is your host, Lulu Nins.
Welcome to episode 19 of She Rebel Radio. Is it time to build your new arena in 2020? Now, this week marks 5 years since I handed in my notice as a criminal defence lawyer, litigator and head of department. I can't actually believe it's been 5 years, but it's been one heck of a journey, as I shared with you in episode 17, the evolution that occurs. So I really wanted to dive in with this episode, a little bit more information about why I came to the decision that I did, that 2015 was going to be the year that I really built my new arena to play in, and 3 things that really helped me decipher that that was something that I had to do, that I was no longer available for playing in an arena that wasn't built by me. Yet they were probably 3 things that I wasn't in a position to articulate at the time. So I am hoping, and I know that if you are listening to this and you are feeling like 2020 could be the year that you really need to get serious about building that new arena, then these 3 things are really going to help you to decipher that this is the time. And this is your way forward, that you're not going completely crazy in feeling how you're feeling of breaking out of something that really did feel stable and secure and right for you that no longer is. And it may be that you've started building something, but you're not really taking the action that you need to take to really nail it down and make it happen a little bit more. So I'm excited to share more of my story with you and these 3 things that you can really have a play around with in order to decipher whether 2020 is the year you're really going to go for it or whether you're still just going to play around with it. You may have heard me say before, it took me some 2 years before I really came to this decision. And as I've said, I was on holiday. I was literally up in the air on a trip on the way to New York for quite a short trip, only 5 days, when I got a telephone call from the office about partnership, which had gone to my male counterpart. And I was already on the fence whether this was somewhere I wanted to be. And that was just what I needed to give me the push to really decide that actually this was no longer the arena that I wanted to play in. That I had to get out of that arena and, as scary as it was, lay the foundations and build a new arena for myself to play in. One that was built on my terms, one with more meaning and significance, and one which was absolutely built on feminine presence, which is certainly something that I couldn't articulate how I was feeling at that time. So in short, I had to get out of the boxing ring. And I was listening to Desert Island Discs the other day with Kimberley Motley, the international lawyer who flies over from the States and works within the Afghan courts. Amazing work that she does, and, you know, really rising in her significance. But there were some really interesting pieces in that episode where she talks about that she's always been a fighter. She sees herself as a fighter, and that massively resonated with me. I quite often joke I was born with my cord wrapped around my neck, unable to breathe. So I really felt like I came into the world fighting, and that is something that I continued and something that I massively found my significance within in fighting for other people in the criminal courts. And I know her background is as a public prosecutor, so our stories massively resonate on that. But she talks about she's always been a fighter, and if you want to stop getting hit, you have to get out of the boxing ring. And that resonated of, yeah, that's what I did 5 years ago. I really came to that decision. I got off the fence of, shall I go that way or shall I go that way? That I absolutely had to get out of the boxing ring. And what happens after that is you need to build a new arena for yourself to play in. Or it may be that you get into another boxing ring and start a different fight. But what I'm talking about here is building a new arena, your own arena of significance that is playing by your own rules, which is all about having your own business. And also Kimberley Motley talked a lot about how she decompressed, or she didn't talk about, I should say, decompressing from the aggression that she needs to fight in that boxing ring, and how she needs to decompress to go back to the States and spend time with her family and all of that. She didn't want to share too much about that because of the vulnerability that came with it, and that was actually really difficult for her because she's still in the boxing ring. She's still fighting that fight and playing that game and still amazing at what she does. But there is always a time, and I think particularly for women, it really got me to question what it actually costs us to stay in that boxing ring for too long. And that might be where you're at right now. So stay tuned for episode 19, because we're going to dive into how you know that it's time to redefine, redesign, and build that new arena for yourself to play in. Now, I was sharing in the She Rebel Club, which is my online community on Facebook. If you haven't found us there, please just type in She Rebel Club with Lulu Mins. I will put the link in the show notes for this episode as well. We were diving into a 5-day mini course, a 5-day mini challenge called the Breakout Challenge, which is all about supporting you in breaking out from the arenas that are no longer serving you and moving into sowing the seeds and building the new arena that will support you in moving forward. And the word arena came up, and that was the same week that I listened to the podcast episode about the boxing ring. And I was talking in the Breakout Challenge about female gladiators and how in Roman times they really challenged the status quo of gender by being female and playing in that arena. They were assuming power, which wasn't seen as a feminine thing to do. They were expressing themselves creatively, and they were all about winning the game. And that was really challenging to gender at that particular time. So I really wanted to weave this through, reflecting on my story and what that really meant for me when I decided it was time to build that new arena. So I got back from New York. I cancelled Christmas on the way out to New York because of my concern with finances. But I did, despite the fear that came up for me. Despite that, my fear of staying in that arena became bigger than my fear of what it would take to sow the seeds and build a new one. And I did that. I handed in my notice. I stayed at the firm for another 2 weeks. And then I left. And I suddenly had this blank sheet, this blank canvas. I didn't have the phone that I had anymore. I only had 10 phone numbers. I wasn't really on social media particularly at that time. I had a total blank canvas to build this new arena on, which was so exciting and so scary at the same time, because this was my arena that I'd spent 11 years working in and many years studying to earn my ticket into that arena. But what I can say is, even though I didn't know how I was going to pay the mortgage at that point, I slept like a baby, which I hadn't been sleeping before that. But I did have a number of meltdowns as well of really not knowing what to do with the new arena that I could build myself. I didn't really know where to start. But this is why I started, and this is what I want you to tune in with here. So tool number 1 is I needed to assume a new power. I needed to assume a new power and a new significance. And as I've said, this new arena I knew had to be built on new meaning and new significance. In short, I felt like over that last couple of years in my old arena, I had lost my power, I had lost my significance, and I was freaking exhausted of exerting power in a way that didn't feel good to me, of the constant competition and the force that was needed to make my voice heard in the courtroom and in the boardroom. And I was no longer excited by my significance in terms of I didn't feel like I was really making a difference. There wasn't a case that could walk into my office. You can see like a file on legs there, coming into my office that would excite me, where I really felt I could get my teeth into and that I could make a difference. I'd also come to the conclusion that partnership was absolutely about following the rules and fitting into the box. It wasn't actually about tearing up the rule book. It wasn't about changing things. It was about playing someone else's game and someone else's arena. And that was something that I wasn't prepared to do. I wasn't prepared to do it for a status that I realised didn't actually mean anything to me. I felt like I wasn't the way the courtrooms were going were getting worse and not better. I was having to force myself into someone else's game and someone else's arena. And what I can say, in my last 6 months, I'd got really quiet, which isn't like me. It is in some ways, but it's not when I've got an opinion about something that needs to be changed. I'd gone really quiet. I didn't care anymore. I didn't care what happened where I was working. I didn't care what happened up at the courtroom. I still cared about my clients massively. But even then, there was a temptation to almost cut corners because it wasn't really making a difference. I didn't feel like it was making the difference that I needed and wanted to have that motivation to get up in the morning and fight that game. I wanted to assume new power, a softer power, which I don't always like that word. And these were skills that I used particularly to my clients, which was the only part of the job that I was still really enjoying. But a softer power, which is much more empathetic, which is much more understanding, with kindness, with nourishment, with support, with learning, with collaboration, which is a power that isn't really respected in the corporate world so much. And it is a power that is actually based on feminine presence, and things that we do not in that world, as I said, that exhaustion, that power, that force, you know, the threat, the competition, the constant battle that you are in, which becomes exhausting. And I'm going to put it on this episode because this is in a podcast which is about creating a new narrative for women in business. We've squeezed ourselves to fit into a number of systems and structures that weren't not just designed by us, but by women, full stop. It's about inviting this new power into the arena. And often that begins with us leaving those old arenas and getting clear about what those differences are and how we can build something that is new and fresh for us to play in, which will have the knock-on effect in the outside world eventually. You know, this is quite a new thing for women in their own businesses. And we see that as I talk about, you know, the power struggle, the significant struggle, the exertion of power, the force, the threats, the competition. It's like the chess pieces playing people off. We see that in the political world. The court world is a reflection of that, and it is freaking exhausting. Something absolutely needs to change, and change on a mass scale starts with us doing this work on an individual level. So I was exhausted of that power play, of the way of doing business. I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to play that game. And it may be that you are feeling the same, that you are exhausted with the power that you need to exert in your current position. And you know that there is a new power and a new significance and way of doing things that you can create in an arena that's built on your terms. So have a think about that. And then we're going to move on to number 2. I had a real need to express myself creatively. And that was despite the story I had at the time that I wasn't a particularly creative person. And when I started my first business in June 2014, whilst it wasn't the right business for me in the dating industry, I totally loved, again, having a notebook in my bag, scribbling down all my ideas, getting the website together, our branding, which we totally did all incorrectly, I might add. But I just was following that need to express myself creatively, a need that had been stifled in the corporate world, in the legal profession, where we really are, throughout the education system and the training that's required, conditioned to follow a particular way of doing things and to follow the rules and to use templates and systems and structures and to climb the hierarchical ladder in a particular way, like lemmings almost, to do it in the way that it's always been done, to say it in the way that it's always been said, to draft it in the way that it's always been done. And there was, you know, don't get me wrong, little bits of room for creativity. But actually, as I've said, the higher up I went in that hierarchical ladder, the more I felt that I needed to squeeze myself to fit into someone else's armor, someone else's outfit, to continue to be part of that arena. And my creativity, my creative side was absolutely dying inside. Now, in the last episode 18 of What It Takes for Women to Thrive in Business, Claire Griffiths and I discuss about how women coming out of the business world can have amazing leadership skills, lots of business experience that really is helpful in their new businesses. But what can be lacking is playing all the different roles in terms of being the idea person and maybe not just the implementer of those ideas, but that creation, that innovation, that problem solving, that critical thinking, that finding your voice again. And so often you may have gone to the people that are teaching you systems and structures and modules and the rules of this new arena, whereas actually you need to go and find your creative voice, which is a big part of the work that I do with my clients, and really unleash that creative side of yourself and not just follow a new set of rules that haven't been designed by you. And me and a client were actually talking about this at my retreat. I was like, why are lawyers one of the worst for actually ripping off other people's ideas? And my client said to me, because, we're trained, aren't we, to use templates and, this is how you do it. And you just take the template and you change it a little bit to make it your own. But this is so much deeper than that, of really going deep and finding that authentic voice and way of expressing yourself, which is so crucial to really creating that new arena. And just feel into that. How would that feel to be able to do that on such a creative level and to really allow that to be the guide in your business? So if you are feeling stifled creatively and you are feeling like you are just done with that conditioning and that rule following, and the higher up you get to the ladder, the more conditioning there is, by the way, that is a real sign for you that it is your time to break out and create that new arena for yourself. And one which is territorial, is really so grounded in you that no one else can fit it into a freaking template and do what you do. So that is number 2. Number 3 is winning the internal game. So this is more than mindset, although mindset is absolutely crucial. A big part of how I work with my clients in finding their new meaning and significance is about winning the internal battle of embodying change, not just fixing it within the mind, and learning to trust their intuition, and that being the guide to building their new arena and allowing that arena to unfold. And that, my friends, my She Rebels, is really where the feminine presence part of your story, part of that new arena, can really be created. And it really is a learning curve in learning to trust, It was really intuition for me, which was saying, you need to get out, you need to leave this arena, you need to do something different, you need to sow the seeds and build something different. And I didn't trust it. But when I started to trust it and see that support always came in, that net always came out underneath me, when I really learned to follow my intuition, which has come up so many times from the amazing entrepreneurs and women that you've heard on She Rebel Radio so far, is learning to trust your gut and follow your intuition, is really leading with feminine presence, which you can absolutely do in that new arena. And that it was a massive skill that I did use more than I realised in the legal profession in terms of supporting my clients and the decisions that I came to of the best way forward. And that was something that it was a real gift for me, something I didn't fully recognise, but it was something that I wanted to unleash even more and to live my life and create my business from that space and to have the freedom to do that. So ladies, I hope this has been a really valuable episode for you to really tune in. Is it time for you to assume a new power? Is it time for you to express yourself creatively? And is it time for you to win that internal battle in leading with feminine presence and your intuition? And if the answer is yes to all of those things, then 2020 is absolutely the year you need to build your new arena. And I would love to support you within that. So if you would love to know more about how you can work with me, how I can support you by way of the Rebel Heart Club Mastermind, which is in its 4th year in a row, which is the all-encompassing evolutionary program that I've created, that I've taken many, many women through to help them build their new arenas. And it's exactly everything that I needed that wasn't there when I needed it to create my new arena. So I would love to support you. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Do leave some comments and takeaways and shares if you have. And I look forward to sharing more with you next week in She Rebel Radio.
Thanks for listening to She Rebel Radio, the podcast for high-performing women leaders who want to unlearn conventional rules, leave prestigious careers, and launch businesses of significance. She Rebel Radio is executive produced and hosted by women's advocate and coach Lulu Mims. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. You can find Lulu Mims on Facebook and LinkedIn at Lulu Mims and on Instagram at LuluMims_biz. Until next week, keep rebelling against the rules and designing success your way.